And this is it. This is the Micron line of seating dies. Before we get started, for a limited time, you can save 15% off your entire Micron order. That's both the threaded seater that we're going to review, as well as the arbor seater. So if either one of these are something you're interested in, take a look at the code below, head over to Bullet Central, and save yourself a little money. So let's start with the actual arbor die. Now, I think they make a great arbor die. It has a really nice adjustment to it. I'll show you a couple features on it, but before I do, let's talk about Micron and why they chose that name. Now, I'm not a machinist. I don't get into that world. It's just not anything I've ever done, but I did kind of wonder why they chose the name Micron, because it's a unit of measurement, right? It represents a certain dimension, and that happens to be 1/26,000th, or I think 1/10,000th of a millimeter. And in talking to them, they said it's because that's the dimensions that we make these to in terms of how they are fit. And it is what they've determined to be the correct amount of fit that still allows the parts to move, but otherwise ensures that there is as little play as possible in the actual parts. Now, we'll start with the seating stem. They do a really beefy seating stem. I've handled a lot of stems in my life, and this one definitely has the nicest looking hole. It's going to really feel nice when you put the bullet in it. It's going to center up nicely, which is important because a lot of times people get a stem and they go, okay, the bullet locks up in there really tight. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing. You want, when the brass comes up, you want this bullet to center itself in the stem before you start applying the pressure. And if this locks up into the stem itself, well, suddenly you are going to find yourself pushing the bullet and potentially causing additional run out on your loaded round. So they polish it up nicely. It's beefy. It's got a really nice chamfer to it. And I can tell you, having used one off and on for the last year, that it feels great. The other pieces, you've obviously got the lockdown piece, and then the collar itself that has the graduations on it. And then you have what would be the other half of the micrometer here on the body itself. And that's going to allow you to make adjustments that are about 1/1000th of an inch, provided, it's a small amount. Obviously, you got to, be able to see it. But when you move this 1/1000th of an inch, you should then gain 1/1000th of an inch up or down on your seating. As somebody who is slowly aging and now finding that my eyes are not as great as they once were, I do find that I have to put my readers on to see the graduations on here. They are laser etched, and it is a very nice job. But as with a lot of things these days, I struggle to see them without my readers on. So if I am doing this kind of stuff, I will tend to do that. But otherwise, the markings on the collar itself are really big and bright, and I had no issues locating those. And so for me, if I was using it without my readers, it was still big enough where I could see the marks and come to center without reading the graduations. But it is nice having those on there as a reference as well. We're going to set this up over in my reloading area here shortly, and I'll show you how I seat with this. But the basic concept is going to be that we are going to put a round in that we need to load. We are then going to seat it with our arbor press, which is pushing down on the stem here. And that is going to push it a known distance. And that is really why arbor dies are so loved, because there's less chance, a ton less chance of any tolerance stacking. You're going to have a base, you're going to have the arbor press pushing down, and the stem can't go any further than it can go. When it's hitting, it can't push your bullet any further. So it's really there's a reason bench rest and F-class and other people really love using these arbor dies, because they're just so darn easy. And for me, arbor dies are what I'm going to take with me when I travel to a match, so they are what I actually prefer to use in my shop as well, because I want to, if I'm going to eat an apple in the shop, I want to eat an apple in the field. I don't want it to be apples and oranges. My dies in the shop need to represent what I'm going to do in the field, and as a result, that's what I'm going to use. Now, when we look at the threaded die, we're going to notice that it has a lot of the same similarities. Obviously, there's no top seating stem as you would expect, because the seating stem is contained inside. However, it's basically the same seating stem, just, I don't know, it's like 2.5 times bigger. And this threading I'll talk about in just a second once I show you the seating stem. But you can see we have the same seating stem, just longer and without the head on it. So it's just going to be, you know, impacting the back of the cap here. But you might have noticed it took me a few revolutions to get this off, and you'll see that there is a very fine threading on this. In fact, I don't think there's another die that has quite as fine a thread on it. And one of the reasons that they use that thread, and a lot of people have asked me, you know, when I've talked to them about it, like, why do they use such a fine thread? It doesn't make sense. Like, won't you strip it and stuff? Well, no, I can tell you I've never come close to stripping it on either of these. However, the big advantage is that when you are putting the kind of the locking ring against the set ring, it's really tight without applying a lot of pressure. And that's huge, because on the arbor die, it's less likely you're going to see movement because of how the arbor die works. But on a threaded die, if you don't have good engagement on your micrometer setting here, it can definitely walk on you, and that's no good. So the fact that they use these really fine threads means with minimal pressure, they really tighten up nicely, and you're not going to see the rings loosen up and suddenly after 100 rounds you're 5 thousandths longer. Like, that's not good. So this helps it keep it in check there. This also uses their, I believe, patent pending ring system, which is kind of designed the same way. It's a double ring system, and it's not for everybody. But the way it's designed to work is you've got a locking ring, and then you have basically you have a ring that can lock to the die, and then you have a second lock ring to that ring, and that is to give it. So if you picture the ring and you're tightening it on there's always the opportunity, because you have threads that are slightly larger with the 7/8/16 here, there's always a chance that as you lock it down, it could kick it off a little bit, and you could have just a little bit of run out that's induced because of that. So their theory here is that with the two locking rings together, it is going to create a much more perpendicular platform when you thread that into your press, thereby giving you less run out overall. And here we are back with the dies, and I'm going to show you how to use both the arbor, and then when we're done with this, we'll go to the threaded die. So we have the arbor die. We have rounds that need to be loaded. This one's just been gently pushed in, but I'll explain in a minute. And then the rest of these all need to be seated. So what do we want to do? Well, if you're starting with a previously known length, like a round that you have in your box, and maybe you've been loading with some other die and you're moving over to the Micron, that's a lot easier, because you simply would put in your loaded round, you would move your dial down until the stem just comes up, and then you would work your dial, and that's going to get you within usually 2, 3, 4 thousandths, and then you could make some adjustments off that after measuring. But in this case, we don't have a known loaded round. So how are we going to do it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a round that needs to be loaded. So here's just a piece of brass with powder and a bullet. I am going to take this and put the die over, and now what I'm looking to do is I'm going to move the bottom locking collar down, and I'm going to move the top until I see some room under the seating stem. Now, I want it to seat the bullet enough that I can get a reliable measurement. So I'd say there's probably 30, 40 thousandths of clearance between the underside of the seating stem and the top of the die. And now I'm just going to go ahead and seat this. And what I want to do is I want to take a measurement. And I'm at 2368. So in this particular case, I want to be at 2308. That's my known base to ogive. So that's where I want to load them to. So I need to come in 60 thousandths. So there's two ways I can do that with the arbor die. One is I can simply come back up and take this locking ring, tighten it up to the top, and then what I want to do, and this is honestly the easiest way to do it, now I know where it matches up on my line here, and I need to come out, 60 thousandths. So we are going to, there's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and 60. And so now I've moved that down. I'm going to bring this down so it tightens up. This probably will not be exact, but it's going to get me really close to where I can make a fine adjustment. And this brings up my second point, which is I don't like pushing on a bullet twice for an exact measurement. Now in this case, we're moving 60 thousandths, which is a pretty gross amount. So I don't mind using the same round that we already loaded on just to get an idea, but I'm never going to start loading until I've tested a freshly seeded round, because there can be a slight variance. So now we've done that. Let's give this one a go here. 20, where am I at here? 2312. All right. So I need to come in about 4 thousandths more. So I'm going to take my locking collar and I'm going to move it down 4 thousandths. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to give it a quick snug. And remember, you don't need to wrench on this thing. Just a lightly snugging down is all you need to hold it in place because of the fine threads that are on it. Now, like I said, I don't like using a round for fine adjustment. So we're going to take one that has not been loaded and we're going to give it a little push. And we are at 23,085. So that's perfect. That half thousandths, you have to remember on a caliper, that half thousandths really isn't a legitimate number to measure from. So that 2308 really tells me what I need to know. And now I can take another round and just verify that we are good. 23,085. And I could keep working my way down the line here, but the point is that this is very repeatable, very easy, and it's definitely my preferred way of doing this. So that's the arbor die. Simple, easy. You do have to have an arbor press to do it, but that is option one. Now let me take this down. We're going to bring up the threaded die, and I'm going to show you how that one works. Now that you've seen how the arbor die gets set up and used, I'm going to do the threaded die. We're going to be using it in my Nexus press here, and I'm going to show you the process that I would use just like on the arbor, where if I have no known data, we want to make sure that we are getting it set up correctly. So the first thing that's going to do is loosen up whatever lock ring system you have, whether it's the included Micron rings or whatever your system uses, and we want to back it out quite a bit. Okay, and we just want to leave it loose. And then what we want to do is take a ready to load round, and we're going to either raise or lower your ram, however yours works. And we're going to, so I can feel it, it's touching, which means I did not back it off enough. There you go. So now I can move the die freely, and I want to go until it touches the bullet. So now you can see how I'm spinning it, and then it just stops, okay? And then I'm gonna give it about a half a turn just to make sure the bullet is seating nicely so I can get a good measurement. And I'm at 2392, give or take. I'm just taking a quick measurement because I'm way off. And because it's so far off, I need to make sure that I'm coming down. I'm probably gonna say a little over 1 rotation. And I typically will not use the same bullet for measuring twice, like I've said in the past. But because I'm moving such a far amount, I don't mind using it. 2295. So I went a little bit over. I went about 12 thousandths. So we're going to put that one aside. Now what I can do, however, is I'm going to go ahead and, because I'm close enough within 12 thousandths, I'm not worried about it. I'm going to go ahead and lock up my die ring, which is all you need to do. And you can see that now I cannot move my die ring. And then I can come in here and I need to go about 12 thousandths longer. So I'm going to loosen the upper ring, and then we're going to come in here to the micrometer scale, and that's where we're at. So we're going to go right about there. And then we're just going to snug up that cap again. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. We do not want to jam on that. Fine threads, snug it up, you're going to be good to go. So let's get a round in that has not been loaded yet. .2302, so I didn't go quite far enough. Let's go, there we go. We'll take another round. 2308. Now, if I wiggled it a little bit, it might go under to 23075. We're going to see here. 23085. $23.085. So very repeatable, very reliable, and very easy to get set up. And obviously now I can take this out. I could put it on my shelf, use it when I need, and my seating depth is always going to be set correctly. I might give it just one extra little snug just to make sure everything's good before I put it away or use it again. But for all intents and purposes, it is ready to go, and it is giving repeatable and reliable results. So that is the Micron line. You have your arbor die, you have a threaded die. There is something for everybody. And if you're looking to upgrade, these are a great one to consider. So with that, get out and shoot. Have a great day, and we will talk soon.